Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Standing in the Dark, a weekly podcast series interviewing stage managers on Broadway, off-Broadway, and in regional theater. Today, we are with Ira Mont, the current PSM of Cats on Broadway. Hello, Ira.
Hello, Rachel.
How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well, thanks.
All right. So let's get started. How did you get involved with stage management and theater in general?
I've been involved in theater my whole life. I started wanting to be an actor from the time I was a very little boy and pursued that the way most do. Summer camps and acting classes and performing arts high school, and was a founding member of a theater company. I'm sort of steamrolling here, but did all those things and went to school to be an actor and pursued life as an actor until I was about 25. And in 1987, 88 is when I made the transition from being an actor to being a stage manager. I had never thought about wanting to be a stage manager, but the idea of it came naturally to me when I was in high school. The stage crew class was something that interested me. I learned a lot about lighting, and I was always in the shows, but I was in the stage crew class and helped put things together. And then all my friends through college years and beyond knew that I could help them light their showcases or stage manage their cabarets because I'm naturally organized and responsible and I'm nosy. I like to know how things are going on and how things work. And so the transition came without me looking for it, but there it was. 1987, I did a season of summer stock in St. Louis. A friend had me come out, offered me my equity card to be an actor in half of the season and be the stage manager of the other half of the season. And I came home to New York that fall expecting to continue pursuing life as an actor. And then calls started coming and suddenly I was a stage manager.
What was the thing that made you knew you wanted to switch from being an actor to a stage manager?
What made me want to switch? Well, I would be not completely honest if I didn't say that I was intrigued by the notion that I was no longer having to go to auditions, but that people were actually calling me and asking me if I would be interested in doing a job, a stage managing job. And they were small to start, and they came infrequently, but they were coming and they were paying jobs. And I realized I liked it, that I didn't miss the acting. I think my mother, my late mother, who was a psychotherapist, in a very unusual Jewish motherly way, instead of being concerned about my being in the theater, actually, when I made the transition, her question was, but will you be happy not being an actor? So, and the answer was yes. So that's how I realized it was okay.
What was your first big break in New York?
My first big break in New York. I guess my first, well, it depends on how you quantify or qualify a big break. Mm-hmm. My first Broadway show was in 1993, Cyrano the Musical. I was the second assistant stage manager. Bob Borod, the late Bob Borod, who was my mentor, was the production stage manager. But I guess my first big break in New York was actually my first real stage managing job in New York, only because of where it led to. And of course, that's the way a career works, is this builds on that, builds on that. This theater company that I was a founding member of, one of the members was Aaron Sorkin, and he had written a play called Hidden in This Picture. It was a one-act play, and it was going to be done downstairs at the West Bank Cafe, now the Laurie Beachman Theater. And we did a reading of the play for a potential director, and I read one of the roles. I was one of the actors. And at the end of the reading, we decided we were going to hire this man to be the director, and he talked to me about the fact that while I did wonderfully and I was fantastic in the part, he actually knew someone else who could play that part, and he didn't know anyone else who could stage manage and would stage manage for free. And he knew through the other guys in the company that I could stage manage, and would I do that? And so I said yes. So I stage managed that, and that director was David Saint, who is now the longtime artistic director at the George Street Playhouse, But I ended up working with David for many years. I did, I think, 14 shows with him here in New York, off-Broadway at Musical Theater Works and on the summer stock circuit. I did Fame the Musical, the original touring production. So I guess that one act at the West Bank was my first big break.
What's the most memorable experience you've had so far working on a show?
Most memorable experience? Like, which show was the most memorable, or you mean a singular experience?
Whatever you want to say.
Wow, that's hard. It's moments like these where I wish I kept a journal and could then look back at all of the moments we go through. I'm not a journal keeper, and I'm afraid I've probably forgotten more than I remember now. Well, I was stage manager on The Producers, and that was an extraordinary experience, and Mel Brooks was an icon, and I was an enormous fan. All through childhood, I was one of those kids who memorized the 2013 albums and loved all the movies. So the day I met Mel Brooks in a rehearsal studio on a show I was going to be working on of his was extraordinary. What else was memorable? There also another producer's story. We had not a show stop one night, but our soundboard crashed. And we ended up, we were doing the show with no amplified sound, but we didn't stop. The music director pulled the band way down, and the actors realized it, and there was no real reason to stop in the moments we were having, and the audience got quiet, and they were listening, and it was going quite well. Clearly, there was no amplified sound. And at the end of the accountant office scene, at the end of the I Want to Be a Producer number, we go to a blackout, and then it transitions to the rooftop, and we meet Franz Liebkind. He comes up in a spot to sing his little song. And I had told everybody on headset this is what we would be doing, and so the I Want to Be a Producer number ends, applause, 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 we go to blackout, and the spotlight comes up on me. I had gone out on stage. I'm certainly not the only stage manager to have to make an announcement to an audience about a situation, and very often we do it on stage, but that was rather theatrical, a moment for a stage manager to let the audience know that obviously we had no sound and we were planning on continuing, and they were working on getting it back up, but if they would be very quiet, and we would. So those are two memories, I guess, both on The Producers. I've had lots of other memories on other wonderful shows.
On the flip side, what was one of the most difficult experiences you've had to date?
Well, for a stage manager, a show stop usually qualifies as a difficult experience, and I had a doozy of a show stop on Ghost the Musical. We had several show stops. It was a fantastic show, which I loved doing. Very technologically complex and very unique and groundbreaking. But it had difficulties with the engineering, and things didn't always work quite right. And we had an unfortunate, very long, we had a 22-minute show stop on our big press night. Now, I will say that the show did not last as long as we all wished it would have, and the reviews were, mixed. I think it's fair and honest to say that while almost all of the reviewers mentioned the show stop, that certainly was not the reason for any of the reviews. But that was a difficult moment. I had an actor in a play many years ago who had an epileptic seizure during the show. Everything, he is fine, was fine then, and continues to be fine. And everything went all right. We stopped the show, and we got some physicians from the house to come back and help us. But that was a difficult moment. I'm sure there are many others, and probably some even more interesting than those. But those are the ones that jump to mind.
What did you do as the stage manager in your team when your actor had the epileptic seizure on stage?
We realized, the guys on stage with him realized something was wrong, and he realized something was wrong. And so he actually exited. He made his way off stage. And I got to him in the stairwell first, and then others came around. The other fellas, the other fellas were still on stage, and they ad-libbed for a couple of moments because they weren't sure what was happening or if the actor would come back on. So they kept the dinner scene going for a moment, and then it was clear something was going on in the wings to the actors. And so one of the actors stood up and actually said to the audience, we're clearly having... It was one of the actors who actually let the audience know we were having a show stop. Mm-hmm. And he said, one of our cast is ill, and we're going to deal with him, and we'll be right back to you, and if there are any physicians that could help us. And once he finished the seizure, 911 came, and he got to the hospital and was treated fine. And our understudy, who had been watching the show from one of the boxes, he had run backstage, and we got him ready, and he was on mid-show. Those mid-show changes like that. If you hope that the initiating experience is either not serious or turns out okay. Mm-hmm. And those moments can actually be very exhilarating, getting an understudy on. We just recently at Cats had an experience, I'm wavering from the question, where it was like a NASCAR pit crew team because one of the cats hurt himself. He hurt his ankle, and he came off stage, and his cover was one of the booth singers, and so the booth singer went from being in the basement. He said he had literally just taken a bite of a candy bar because the singing was done for several minutes in his street clothes, and he went from basement booth street clothes to on stage fully beat, fully made up in Cat, 12 minutes. 12 minutes. And that impressed all of us. That we didn't think we'd be able to get it that quickly. But the hair and makeup and wardrobe and sound and stage management and the actor himself, it was pretty cool.
Going back to the showstopper on Ghost, that was 22 minutes long. What was that experience like?
Stressful and difficult for all of us. I mean, aside from the fact that we knew that the press was there, we knew it was a press night. The stop was of a mechanical nature. The automated scenery had an issue, and there's always that waiting because the crew is doing everything they can, and you are keeping abreast of what's going on. And sometimes they can give you real time, we'll be good to go in 3 minutes, and sometimes it's, we're working on it. And we've all been in those positions where you just don't know how long it's going to be, and you want to try and keep the audience engaged, or at least let them know what they're doing. I can't remember if it was that night. I don't think it was. Another night where we had a show stop at Ghost, several members of the cast, and Richard, our leading man who plays guitar in the show, they came out and they did a little sing-along with the audience for several minutes while the crew was working to get the show stop done. And then it was fixed and we went back to work.
On a lighter side, what is your favorite part of being a stage manager?
I enjoy the run. There are a lot of stage managers who love the rehearsal process. There are a lot of stage managers who love the tech process. I love both of those things, and I do enjoy going through them. They are obviously a necessary element to get to the run, but it's the run that I enjoy the most. I like keeping the ship moving forward. I like maintaining the machine. I like taking care of the details. And it is clearly, certainly on a big musical, but also on the many plays I've done, it's not the same every day. I mean, you hope for it to be the same every day. There's that element where you do look forward to the non-issues, and all you're doing is coming to work, and you're going to put the play up, and you're going to do the play, and you're going to go home. That happens a little too rarely, not from the audience's perspective, but from our perspective. And I enjoy that that dynamic of theater. Keeping it fresh, keeping it new, keeping it interesting, and keeping it going.
I know on Cats, as of, God, I forgot when, that you had maybe had 1 or 2 performances with full cast since opening.
Oh, yes, and I've lost track. I have not, we're coming up on our 300th performance. We had 16 previews, and we're coming up on performance 300. And I have not looked back in quite a while because it has been a remarkably long time since my in-out box had the word none in it. Now, at Cats, we do something, we swing out the dancers on a rotating basis for them to be able to rest their bodies. It's a very difficult show, very physically demanding. And so we realized that giving them the opportunity to sit out a show that they're fine doing it. They don't have, a relative in town that night. And it gives the swings and the understudies the opportunity to stay fresh in all the different roles. So when I see the light ahead of me that we're coming out upon a performance that might actually have everyone in the building, I won't have any swing outs that night, just so I can have none in that in-out box again, at least another time in this calendar year.
Before this mic started rolling, we were talking about the idea of change in stage management. How has stage management changed since you got started to today?
Wow. I've been doing it for about 25 years now. How has it changed? Well, the technology has changed. It's improving and getting more complicated and complex and capable. So the abilities of the stage manager to facilitate and manage all those things has changed because there are new things to learn. You have to understand the automation, you have to understand the new sound systems and what it means to run shows on time code and MIDIs and etc. There wasn't a lot of that happening 25 and 30 years ago. Shows are getting bigger. Not all shows, but shows are getting bigger, and so there's more to manage. There's more to keep track of. There's a bit more of an expectation on what you can and will do in that with the advent of the cell phone. I remember working with a company manager in the early 90s who was very unhappy about the invention of the fax machine because the ability to fax meant that that people will want information right away. And so now stage managers have always, to some degree, been a 24/7, an actor would, if an actor is sick, they would call you when they're sick, and that's either on a Sunday morning or late on a Friday night or whatever. So that hasn't changed, but the access has changed because we all have a little box in our pockets that is a 24/7 access toy, and everybody utilizes that for better or worse, as do we. We also believe we have access to our casts and our managements as well. That's one element of change. I'm sure there are many, but that's one.
With this 24/7 access, how do you keep a work-life balance?
You just have to. I don't think there's a magic trick to it. I don't think there's any one right way to do it. I think you have to accept it. You have to breathe through it. Not be frustrated by it because it is what the job is, or at least it's my take that that's what the job is. We are not hourly workers. We don't punch a clock. We signed on for this job. We are not. It's not even the actors who are called at half hour, and they come at half hour, and they do the show, and they go home. And whatever is expected of them beyond that, sometimes there's rehearsal, they have their own expectations or their own things, they take classes or whatever. That's what their job is. We can't actually do our job in the finite time frame that is normally stated. We can't show up at half hour. It is standard practice that the stage manager is there an hour before half hour. That's standard across the board at every level of theater and every theater across the country. That's pretty much the way everybody does it. And that's what the job is. And then there's the need to take care of schedule changes because people have called out. And that's going to happen while you're sitting at home at 11 o'clock drinking your coffee or vacuuming the house or while you're at the gym or whatever it is you're doing. And you can't put it off. You can't say, well, I'll take care of that at 6:30 because that's not what the job is. It's also not fair. If you know that an actor is going to be out, you should let the understudy know as soon as you know, if that's appropriate. And so that wasn't the answer to the question. The question was how do you do a work-life balance? I think my answer is still what I started with. You just do. I think if you don't force yourself or allow yourself to, when work is not happening, to live your life, and whatever that means, for me, the life balance is not all, sitting at the coffee shop or even taking a walk in the park with my wife. We do those things and we try and make time for that. But for me, the life balance also includes the fact that I'm the stage manager, vice president at Actors Equity, and there's a lot of time and a lot of meetings and a lot of energy that I choose to devote to that. So my wife considers that part of the work, but it's not part of the work, it's part of the life work. Did that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay.
What do you do as the vice president of Actors Equity?
I am one of 8 officers, and we are a council of 83, including the officers, across the country who are the elected leaders, the governing body of the Union for Actors and Stage Managers in live theater in America. As the third vice president, as the stage manager vice president, my duties are no more or less than any of the other elected leadership, save the president, Kate Schindel, and the secretary-treasurer, Sandra Karras, who have very specific duties. As the stage manager vice president, however, I am the chair of the National Stage Managers Committee. I am the chair, currently the sole chair. I am usually a co-chair of the National Production Contract Committee, which is the committee that oversees Broadway and the road. I chair a couple of other committees. I'm the chair of the Constitutional Review Committee. I've represented equity with various other organizations at COBUG, the Coalition of Broadway Unions and Guilds, at the AFL-CIO, FIA, the International Federation of Actors. I go to a lot of meetings and try to do what's right to make the lives and working conditions of the members better.
All right. How many Broadway shows have you done since getting started?
The Cats is my 18th Broadway show.
18th Broadway show. And what's something that you wish you knew before you got started, thinking back over all those 18 shows?
Gosh. What is something I wish I knew? Isn't that interesting? I certainly didn't know everything I needed to know. I think it would have been good to know how much of a time commitment the job is. Since I did not start out as a stage manager, I did not start out life as a stage manager. I knew what stage managers did, and I worked with them both in school and in the professional jobs I had as an actor. But I didn't quite understand the commitment, which is not to say the commitment is a negative, but I think that having known ahead of time, I don't know, maybe I would have crafted things differently somehow, although I couldn't even begin to think what I would have done differently had I known that. But that would have been nice. Well, that would have been nice to know how much time it was going to take. What else would I have liked to know? Gosh, I don't know what I would have liked to know, which probably is scary. It's a little scary to me, because in no way do I believe I knew or know or can figure out what's coming next, everything. But it's that you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how I feel about it. You don't know what you don't know. I do like the idea of learning about things quickly when you realize it's something you need to understand. So maybe that would have helped. There's something that would have helped. If I had known the breadth of what the job requires, I would have prepared more along the way. You don't quite realize how much HVAC and medical and security and all the things that actually are in stage management that you actually have to know something about to be a stage manager.
In the same vein, what's something that you would like younger stage managers to know as they start their way into their careers?
I think it's important to stay open-minded about everything. I think that people who find themselves drawn to stage management probably are open-minded people to begin with. The job is about facilitating. The job is about communicating. And so those ideals have to be in the forefront of what you're prepared to offer. Everybody wants things to go the way they want them to go and want things to be the way they think they should be. And there's nothing wrong with that. But our job is actually to make things the way other people want them to be and other people think the way they should go. We are there to support almost everybody else in the event. And that doesn't mean that we should be unsupported. We are entitled and deserve to be supported and appreciated and fairly compensated and looked after as well. But literally our job is to do that for everybody else. And that comes with a very fluid framework. It's very difficult, in my estimation, to think you can do the job successfully and well, creating too many boundaries. So again, I'm a union leader. I want people to be paid. I want them to be paid well. I want them to have the proper working conditions and to have the right hours and rest periods and all that comes with that. And truth be told, even young stage managers who are not working under union contracts yet, they're entitled to those things as well. But the nature of the job is, like I said earlier, we're not hourly workers and we're not folks who walk into the building and punch a time card. There has to be a willingness to go with the flow. Now, does that mean the show must go on? Not all the time. There are moments in life where the show maybe doesn't go on. But yes, our purpose is to help the show go on. That's the most important thing, doing what is best for the show.
What do you look for when you're assembling a team?
I look for people that I will enjoy spending time with. I look for people I want to be in the room with. I look for folks who can make me laugh. I look for folks who compliment me. I don't mean compliment me because I'm such a nice guy. I mean compliment me in terms of they are covering things and are capable of doing things that I either can't do well or no longer wish to do. Mm-hmm. I look for people who share my philosophy of the job, who are prepared to go the extra mile. Sounds cliche, and it sounds like all bets are off and 24 hours a day and come in. That's not what I mean. But sometimes you have to go the extra mile, and I want people who are going to do that. I want people who have a good sense of themselves and who can read the room.
And how did you get started teaching?
I got asked. I never thought about teaching, really. I think the first time, actually, a former executive director of Actors Equity, Alan Eisenberg, he taught a class at Yale for management students in the graduate program there, and he would bring guest speakers in, and for several years he would have me come up as the stage manager that would talk to these students, and I enjoyed that. I like talking. I don't enjoy the schoolwork part of it particularly. I'm sure the students don't either, but I enjoy the camaraderie of a classroom and offering experience. And then I ended up, I did the same, just guest speaking actually, at Rutgers, at Purchase, and at Columbia. I did it once. Ruth Kreshka, who started the stage management program at Columbia University, she asked me to come and speak to a class, and then the next year she called and asked if I would be interested in actually teaching the class. And we talked about what that would mean and what would be expected of me and what the goals were. And we talked about it, and I felt like I could do that. I felt like I had something to offer. And it's maybe a little unconventional from a classroom setting. It's kind of a lecture, kind of a discussion. I do offer both equity as a lab, quote unquote, and the show that I'm working on as a lab. And there are lots of visits to that show. And so that's what Ruth asked, and I said, okay. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, to be perfectly honest. And I did. And I've been actually doing it every year of the program at Columbia.
Mm-hmm. This idea of teaching and mentoring, who are some of your mentors that have helped you along your career?
I mentioned Bob Borod, who was the first PSM I worked with on Broadway. He was known as the nicest man on Broadway, and he was. He was a wonderful stage manager. Beverly Randolph, who I only worked with a couple of times, but when you were with Beverly, you learned a lot. And she was a gem and a very special woman to the stage management universe. Michael Ritchie, who is currently don't know exactly his title, he's the producing artistic director. He's out in Los Angeles at the Center Theater Group. Michael was the stage manager at Circle in the Square when I was an acting student at Circle in the Square, and I watched the 1982 production of Present Laughter from the booth with Michael many times, and this is several years before I thought I was going to be a stage manager, but I knew it was something I was interested in, and I learned a lot from that. Steve Zweigbaum, who I worked with on both The Producers and Young Frankenstein, I learned a tremendous amount from Steve. My wife, Jill Cordell, who is also a stage manager, we only worked together a couple of times way back in our working and married lives, but two stage managers coming home talk shop a lot, and I've learned a lot from hearing what she has gone through and how she handles things, and that rubs off.
All right, time is coming to a close almost. Is there anything else that you want to say about stage management, about your career, about anything?
You're supposed to ask me a leading question. That's so... anything I want to say. It is a noble profession, and it is a necessary job in the theater. I like to think it wouldn't happen without us. Of course it might.
Maybe.
Wouldn't happen as well. It's a fascinating life. It's a fascinating career. And to anyone who's listening, who is thinking about going into a stage management career or is just beginning, I encourage you to stick with it. I like to say that I have no statistics to prove this, but I believe in my heart that a promise can almost be made. You've heard me say this, Rachel. A promise can be made that can't be made to our acting colleagues and our writing colleagues and our directing colleagues and our designing colleagues. But as a stage manager, if you can be flexible in your life, if you can be flexible about the kind of stage management work you want to do and the places you may or may not live and the amount of money that you can make in any given job, if you can be flexible about the course of your life, at least for a time, and you're good at the job, you will have a career in stage management. You will have a career in stage management. And if you stick with it, and you're good at it, and you're flexible enough at the beginning so that you can establish yourself, then you will have hopefully you'll have the ability to not only continue your career, but maybe to be less flexible and be able to make some more choices that work for you as a person. It's fun, and boy is it interesting. It's always interesting. You can't have an ego. Gotta put the ego in the back pocket, and you have to be okay standing in the. What's the title of this podcast?
Standing in the Dark.
Standing in the Dark. It's an excellent title.
Bonnie Panson created it. I didn't.
Good for you, Bonnie Panson. Also, I assisted Bonnie Panson. We worked together many years ago. We only got to work together the one time, but she's also extraordinary. I would consider her a mentor as well. Yeah, it's a fun gig. I'm glad with the choice I made.
Mm-hmm. All right, everyone. That is Ira, who is at Cats right now on Broadway. Thank you, Ira.
Thank you, Rachel. This was fun.
This was fun.